Alya put down the phone, patiently waiting for her husband to wipe all his semen from her back. It was dark outside. It was 8 o'clock. Vitya was still not at home. He was late at work again, but Ol was not up to him. She was so carried away that she did not even notice the late hour. And the thing is that when she returned home, she plunged headlong into communication with Arthur. This time they decided to have a video chat. Alya was all scared and immediately closed the laptop. "What are you doing here?" "Yes, nothing." She was smiling slyly. "The whole room smells of you." Vitya undressed on the move, getting closer and closer to the bed. "My horny wife couldn't wait for her husband?" "Yeah," she purred. "You haven't been walking for so long that I decided to play a little. I hope there's something left for me." "Everything is there for you." Alya hoped that he hadn't heard the conversation. Alya got up and went to the bathroom. "Everything was so good. Why did you ruin everything?" "That's always the way you are. In order to want children, you need to start earning more." His wife's exasperated voice came from the bathroom. Alya left the office in high spirits. Arthur turned her on all day, sent her various beautiful photos of making love. Already on the way down in the elevator, she received another message. "I'm waiting at the exit. Arthur, you're spoiling me." After work, he would meet her again with a large bouquet of flowers. Such a woman should be greeted with such a bouquet every day. Alya hugged him and kissed him. She was no longer shy about kissing him in public. "Do we have any plans today? Tell your husband that you will be late at work." He brought her to the restaurant. The menu was unusual. Without prices, the names of old did not mean anything. Seeing the girl's confusion, Arthur called the waiter. "Help my companion with the choice. What do you prefer, meat or seafood?" "Seafood. Of the freshest there are shrimp in sauce and a dish from the chef fish soup." "From the chef. A salad?" "Greek, Olivier, with seafood." "What will you drink?" Arthur joined in. "So give me this champagne, French, and bring me a salad with mushrooms." "By card or in cash?" "With a card." The waiter brought the terminal. Alya saw the amount of the charge out of the corner of her eye. 28,000. She felt dizzy. From such crazy prices. "Arthur, it's very expensive here," she whispered to him when the waiter left. "Let's go to another place." "Nonsense. The usual prices are here. Never mind." Music was playing in another hall. It seems that live musicians were performing something from the classics. Arthur was having a casual conversation. "I see you finished your drink." He gestured to the waiter. "Repeat the champagne for us." As before, the waiter brought the terminal first, and I copied it from Arthur's phone. Alya is not used to counting other people's money, but according to her modest estimates, he has already spent an amount equal to her husband's salary on her in one evening. Victor stayed up late again, of course. He had sworn earlier that he would not take part-time jobs and would devote more time to his wife. He looked at the phone, prepared an answer in advance, but his wife had not called yet. He plunged into his work. And after they went to the room, Alya was worried. She had to tell her husband something that she would be late, or she would not come at all. She could not call. Now she would not be able to lie so openly. She wrote an SMS. "My love, it looks like a small corporate party is planned. A colleague DR. Probably I will be late." Arthur took a room in a nice hotel. Alya had never been in such places before. A girl dressed in a business suit stood behind the counter. Her beauty could compete with Olena. Giving the guests a duty smile, she greeted them, while Arthur received the keys and solved the formalities. Alya looked around the hall where they were. On the right there was a corridor, and on the left there was a two-story restaurant. Some kind of company was buzzing there. "Football players often rest here." Following her gaze, Arthur said, "Don't worry. The room is in the other wing, next to the pool." The room turned out to be ordinary, spacious, very clean and smelled fresh. In the center of the room there was a large bed, which Alya immediately checked for softness by falling on it. With her back, she raised her arms to her chest, clenching her fists. She looked so cute now. She waited. Her heart was beating fast. It was almost all the way it jumped out of her chest. She could refuse at any moment, turn back, return home to where her husband, was waiting for her. Did you want to? Now she had mixed feelings. She was tormented by remorse. So she hoped that everything would become clear to her how this would happen. "Come on." Arthur looked at her lying there. "Available." He smiled. She certainly didn't see the hidden mockery in his smile. "We have nowhere to hurry. Let's relax first, enjoy all the delights of the hotel. There is a good pool, jacuzzi, saunas. But I didn't think about it. I didn't bring a swimsuit." "I took it." He took out a new set from his bag. "You change. A bathrobe is in the bathroom." There was one set in the room. Towels and bathrobes. Arthur immediately dialed the reception desk. "Good evening. I'm listening to you. Honey, I came with my beloved to relax with you. And you have prepared only one set of underwear." Alia noted to herself, "We had only 2 dates, and he already calls me his beloved and scolds them like that." She liked his attitude, liked how he behaves, persistently, aggressively. Less than 2 minutes later, the maid apologized and brought another set, a bathrobe, towels, and a set of disposable shampoos with a brush and paste. When they were both ready, Arthur took her by the hand and led her through the corridors. He was well-versed here. It was obvious that he was not here for the first time. They went downstairs, passed by the fitness room. It was empty, but through the glass walls you could see a lot of exercise equipment. "Do you know everything well? Do you come here often?" "Sometimes we relax here with friends." Taking off his robe, Arthur dived off the side. Swimming a few meters underwater, he immediately took a decent speed, making strong and sharp strokes with his hands. Yes, Arthur swam almost professionally. Alia watched him for a few minutes. Then, hanging up her robe, she also carefully descended the stairs into the pool. After trying out the cool water, she swam as best she could, keeping her head above the water. Tearing her away from him, Arthur took her to the sauna. At that time, there was not a single person in the Turkish hammam. The fog was like that there was not even a nearby sunbed in sight. Arthur, standing behind her, took off her robe and began to untie the ties on her swimsuit. "There is no one here, and the robe will be in my hands. We will sit naked. In any case, it is better than in such tight swimsuits. If anything, we will immediately put on bathrobes." He put his arm around the girl and reached for her lips. "But I'm not taking off my panties." "Whatever you want. I don't think I need them." And in confirmation of his words, he took off his swimming trunks and put them in the pocket of his robe. After rinsing one of the sunbeds, he sat down and invited Alia to sit next to him. During all his movements, his hero stood at attention. "Your nipples are standing." He squeezed her erect nipple again, causing her to moan. "What are you doing to me?" "And you?" "You see how he stands." "What happened?" "You are my goddess and your word is law." Seeing Alia walking behind Arthur, the noisy company quieted down for a minute. Even a knee-length robe could not hide her figure. But she wasn't wearing any clothes at all under the robe. There was whistling and bawdy jokes. "Baby, if your husband falls asleep at night, come to me." Alia and Arthur went out into the corridor. "You saw how the players stared at you. I'm sure if it wasn't for me next to them, they wouldn't have missed the opportunity." "Yes, but I only want to be yours." Arthur leaned the card against the door and opened it. In the room opposite the bed, he stared into her eyes for a while. Girls like moments like this, so that they feel that a man needs something more than just her body. His arms were gently hugging her. They were actually ready for a long time, but they were delaying in order to get maximum pleasure. But here, in the room, there was no time for foreplay. "Is it good for you?" "Crazy. You're great." "I'm afraid of getting pregnant." "You fool, you're married. You're supposed to get pregnant sooner or later." After changing the rubber, he put the girl with cancer, and everything continued. "Don't forget to take a photo." Arthur took her 5 times a night. Of course, she did not get enough sleep, and they could only fall asleep normally in the morning. Waking up closer to lunch, Alia did not find Arthur next to her. The sound of running water from the bathroom made it clear that he was in the shower. She turned on her phone. So many missed calls from her husband. Strangely, for all the time she spent with her lover, she never had the desire to call her husband. She did not even think about him. It was so good for her. True, she did not remember turning off the phone, but it was for the best. What would she say? The call from her husband was not long in coming. "I felt something." In a sleepy voice, Alia replied that she would arrive soon and hung up the phone. His irritated voice almost ruined her mood. Arthur came out of the shower, drying himself with a towel. Wet drops still glistened on his broad shoulders. "Will you go? I've never had a girl like you." especially those fantasies of ours in the evenings during our conversations. I kept imagining what kind of girl you would end up in bed. Did you disappoint? Of course not. It's obvious that you missed it. You have so much unspent passion. Alia reached for a kiss. Standing on tiptoe, Arthur of course replied. He liked the way she closed her eyes before the kiss. How completely she gave herself up to feelings, opened up to him. Feeling his giant pressing against her again down there. Alia pulled away. Well, no, you're a maniac, and you ran laughing into the shower. When she came out, Arthur was already dressed, trousers and a shirt probably made to order, because it emphasized his figure well. Let's get dressed, have breakfast downstairs at the restaurant, and I'll take you home. Victor hardly slept. He was very worried about his wife. She had never disappeared like that before. She always called. Some bad forebodings tormented him, pulling him out every time and briefly forgetting. He woke up, listened. It seemed to him that someone was standing at the door and turning the lock with a key, but no, silence. Right now, he only wanted his wife to be there. Was she really in the photo? That guy, Arthur, wasn't online either. Forgetting himself in the morning, he woke up. His wife's phone was still turned off. Finally, the phone rang that the subscription, Beloved, appeared on the network. Victor immediately dialed it. Hello? His wife's sleepy voice answered. Where are you? Everything is fine. He wanted to ask many more questions, but his wife interrupted him. It's all right. I'm at Sveda's. I'll be there soon. And she hung up. Victor looked at the phone in disbelief and dialed again. Vitya, I told you I'll come soon, and I'll tell you everything. I'm getting dressed. She hung up the phone again. He tried to dial a few more times, but to no avail. His wife just wouldn't take it. And an hour later she returned. Hearing the lock turn, Vitya was already at the door. Alia came in. Her husband met her in the hallway. Not getting enough sleep, shaggy, and very annoyed. Why didn't you take the phone? He started from the doorway. Darling, well, I told you that we would have a corporate party. I warned you in advance, but I left my phone in my coat, so I didn't hear it. Could you call me yourself? Where did you spend the night? Well, when they started to disperse, Dennis, you know Dennis, so he offered to go to Mazza Park. It seemed like there was a good discount. Well, several people agreed. It was too late to go home after all this, and I stayed the night at Sveda's. She lives nearby, on Enlightenment. Alia went into the kitchen to make herself a coffee and noted the dirty dishes in the sink that she had left yesterday. Why didn't you wash the dishes? I could have washed it, actually. I couldn't find a place for myself. I was so worried about you. I couldn't get through. I didn't know where you were. What was wrong with you? The day passed in some kind of tension between them, but by the evening everything was back to normal. Alia was smiling sweetly again, and the warmth returned to the family again. Victor calmed down, deciding that his wife probably had too much yesterday and she just had a headache. Life was back on track, it seemed to him. Arthur did not write all day. Alia began to worry. She wrote to him herself. He replied after a while that he was busy with work. In the late afternoon, she couldn't stand it and called. Arthur, can you meet me? Well, Alia, you know, I don't have time at all. I got caught. Arthur was smiling, satisfied. He put down the phone. He picked up Alia as usual, only now he was no longer buying flowers. They kissed for a long time in the car. Alia was wearing a short business skirt and a white blouse under her coat. Get in the back seat and take off your panties. Alia immediately followed his order without hesitation. He got out of the car slowly, looked at the windows on the third floor, the lights were on, and climbed into the back seat. Her eyes went crazy. She held his face in her hands. What are you doing to me, my dear? I feel so good. Groaning from his active thrusts, Alia reached for his lips. She closed her eyes again. So, holding her ass, Arthur hammered her all the way for a while, took her by the hair with one hand. Why, Alia opened her eyes. Looking straight into her eyes, he said. Alia ran her fingers through his hair. You see how smart you are? You've drunk everything. And now go home to your husband. Alia cleaned herself up. I'll keep these panties. I'll buy you new ones. Good. Alia smiled slyly. Do you have a flash drive? I need to drop some projects for work. Work at home? What for? If you need money, you tell me. I'll give you how much you need. Yes, it's not that. It's really necessary. Arthur opened the glove compartment and rummaged through the papers and found a flash drive there. "Here, take it. Thanks." Alya kissed him. "I helped you out." "Okay." I ran. She fluttered out of the car and headed for the front door. Vitya saw a black Mercedes drive away from their house, such as had not been driven here before, and a few minutes later Alya got up. Their meetings became regular. She liked the attention Arthur surrounded her with. He gave her beautiful underwear, something she bought herself to look spectacular for her lover. And at home, her tired husband was waiting for her every time, for whom she felt less and less attracted. During lovemaking, Alya often turned her face away from his kiss. His caresses also did not bring her pleasure. "Why am I here with him?" she thought, and Victor was getting more and more worried. Something was wrong. He felt it, but did not know what to do with it. To the questions, "What happened? Problems at work? Share with me. I am your husband. You can tell me." He has heard one answer to all his questions. "No, it's okay. Don't worry." After marital lovemaking, once again pouring out on his wife's tummy, Victor once again raised the topic of children. "How are we going to raise them? Have you thought? In a rented apartment? How are your friends?" Now many people live like this. If you wait for the right moment, you can't wait for it at all. "I actually might want it too, but we don't have conditions." "Vitya, why don't you want to earn more?" "You mean I don't want to?" "You know what our situation is now. We are saving up for a mortgage. I also have a pretty good salary here, and besides, everything is official, so we will get a mortgage, and after some time having accumulated a certain financial cushion, you understand that they will not pay a good salary in a new place right away. It will be possible to change the position. We've already talked about this, and last time you agreed that it was the right thing to do. Why are we talking about it again? I just wish you'd earn more. You don't have any aspirations at all. You want children, but how will we support them? How is there no aspiration? I'm constantly taking part-time jobs. That's why I'm so tired all the time. We're going around in circles again. Maybe if you spent less on yourself, we'd have more money left." "I'm spending mine." "Your own?" "The family doesn't have its own. We have a common budget, and I don't understand why you bought that expensive dress recently. And the salons? And the spa? Each such expenditure pushes back our goals." Alya did not answer him. She turned away to the other side. Such expenses are discussed in the family. Victor sighed. It was useless to continue this conversation. At night, she slept with her face turned away from him. On the very edge of the bed, Vitya, as usual, when his wife is angry, clung to her from behind. Feeling the warmth of her body, inhaling the scent of her hair, he hugged her and began to whisper words of love. "Vitya, I'm hot. Please move away." Husband and wife were lying in the same bed, but a wall seemed to have appeared between them. Each was immersed in his own thoughts. Arthur had everything that she lacked in her husband: confidence, aggression, money. He surrounded her with attention and care. Alya did not see any flaws in him. She became more and more convinced that her feelings for Arthur were growing stronger, and for her husband, on the contrary, they were weakening. The courier, a young handsome student, brought a small black package. The phone rang immediately. "Arthur." "Yes, dear." "Did you get my present?" "Yes, just now. I wanted to open it." Laughter is on the other side. Just don't do it in the office. I recommend going to the toilet. What's in there? Alya went to the toilet. A message has arrived. Try it on. I want you to walk with her the rest of the day. Share your feelings in the evening. Alya went into the toilet stall, locking the door. She looked at the cork for a few seconds. Not so big. It should fit. Alya took a photo and sent it to Arthur. In response, I received a thumb, smiley face. Insolent, she flared up, but said nothing. He often showed her various signs of attention, but Alya tried to ignore him, did not want to swear in the office. At her desk, she tried to sit down, but realized that it was not so easy. The first attempt took her breath away, finally settling down, half sideways shift her body weight to one side, so as not to put pressure on the cork. Alya tried to do work, but nothing came out. Her thoughts returned to the traffic jam in her ass. She did not leave the feeling that she was doing something illegal again. Walking around the office with such a thing was extremely unusual. Looked around the office. Everyone was busy with their own business. No one paid attention to her, except Dennis, who had already returned and was looking at her smiling. Did he really notice? She thought in fright and looked away. And then the cork began to give some kind of pulsations, weak at first, and they could be ignored, but they grew, which caused excitement to grow in the girl. Taking a pencil from the table, Alya began to bite it with her white teeth, looking at the monitor. Her heartbeat quickened, and her breathing became deeper. It became very pleasant. The pulsations became more frequent and intensified. What the? Alya squeezed the tabletop, trying not to show emotion. Dennis came over. Alya, are you all right? You look weird. What is this? What's going on? Can I get you some water? The cooler was in the hallway. Anything to get rid of him now? Yes, please. Alya began to fidget in her chair. She tried to find a position that would make it easier, but everything was in vain. Dennis returned with a glass of water. Alya immediately drained it. Thanks, I think I need to get out. Alya was in a hurry to go to the toilet. Alya looked around. Thank God there was no one in the corridor. The panties were all wet from her nectar. There was no point in putting them on. Taking out the cork, she wrapped it in her panties and hid it in the pocket of her bag. Taking out her phone, she texted Arthur. Scoundrel, what have you done? I almost got burned. Yes, I liked it. We'll call you in the evening. I'm busy right now. At the end of the day, he called her himself. Need a ride? If anything, I'm here. No, don't do it today. I'll have to stay a little longer. All right, dial it when you get home. All right, my dear. Lisa looked a little envious. 2 years later, you and your husband still have such a warm relationship. I envy you. With my husband, yes. Isn't that the case with you? Yes. Where is there? Routine kisses, routine lovemaking. Probably we have already got used to each other. Alya sighed to herself. She lied to Arthur. She did not have overtime work today. She just wanted to think. She needed to do something with her husband. Somehow gently tell him that her love for him had passed, that she had met another man. But how to do it? Vitya certainly would not make a scandal. But this it was even worse. It would have been better if he had boiled over, shouted at her. It would have been easier that way. What to do? In the evening, when the husband and wife had already finished their business and went to bed, the bell rang. Arthur called. Alya looked at her husband lying next to her and dropped the call. Won't you answer? It's not that important. Work issues will wait until tomorrow. A message has arrived. Olenka, is everything okay? Has something happened? Today I can't. Tomorrow we'll talk, she wrote, turning on her side and began to fall asleep. Her husband hugged her, carefully covering her with a blanket. Arthur met her at the door. Without warning, it was unexpected. Hello, my dear. She casually hugged and kissed him. Arthur gallantly put the girl in the car. They weren't going home. There was a bottle of water next to the seat. Alya opened it, and after taking a few sips, put it back in place. The change of route did not alarm her at all. Where are we going? A little surprise awaits you. He was stroking his knee. Today Alya was wearing stockings. The elastic band was barely covered by an office skirt, which was beautiful and attractive. She only needed a collar. After taxiing to the parking lot of the shopping center, he rummaged in the glove compartment and pulled out a leather collar. What is it? My gift. Arthur put it on and fastened it on the girl. It shouldn't be very tight, but it should slightly constrict the throat. He explained. Let's go. He came out himself and helped Alya out. Her hair was disheveled by the wind. She smiled, but a shiver ran through her body. Taking the girl by the arm, Arthur confidently led her to the entrance to the store. The guard was waiting for them and opened the doors, locking them as well. My friend has a new clothing store opening here soon. Why are we here? I told you. You're in for a little surprise. Olga swayed. Oh, I feel dizzy. You're overworked. We'll come soon. Be patient. You'll rest there. But Alya did not reach. Her legs gave way at the very glass doors. But Arthur, who was expecting this, did not pick up the girl. Igor turned out to be a great master of bondage and, taking advantage of the girl's helplessness, tied her up well. In the end, he blindfolded her. Alya was lying tied up in a cancer pose on a mattress on the floor, surrounded by boxes of clothes and mannequins. The men began stroking her naked body. Alya groaned. She began to come to her senses. Is my darling awake? Don't be scared. We tied you up a little bit, but only for your good. I'm sure you'll like it. I'm yours. Do whatever you want with me. Satisfied with the answer, Arthur slapped the girl on the ass. Well, then let's go. Alya, bound without the possibility of moving, her head rested on the bed, all open and defenseless. She had no choice but to surrender to his power. Igor came up from the side, holding a gag ball with holes in his hand, and immediately put it on Olga. Igor left before Arthur took off the bandage from Alya and began to untie her. She could not get up immediately, falling on the mattress. Her arms and legs did not obey her. The man lay down next to her and began to rub her arms and legs, restoring blood circulation. Alya couldn't even speak. She was still in some kind of euphoria. He was saying something, kissing her body, but the meaning of the words did not reach her. Alya was silent all the way. You don't understand. This is different. I thought we had feelings. It seemed to me that we had something besides making love. He dodged her lunge. Calm down. Go home. You just have a little shock. So many emotions. I understand. We'll call you later when you come to your senses. Alya went out and headed home. And her husband was waiting for her at home. It was Alya? There was no doubt. He clearly saw her face. Now the one who was photographing was not hiding, but taking the juiciest shots. Here is Alya tied up with some bandages. The last message came with a smiling smiley face and a thumb. You have a great wife. Vitya was sitting in the living room without a light. How could things turn out like this? How are they going to live now? He got married late, chose his bride for a long time and meticulously, because he wanted it to be like this once and for all. They made plans together. They wanted children before, even came up with names for them. And now, it was like death, if only a part of him had died, leaving a void inside. The door opened and his wife came into the hall. She saw her husband sitting in an armchair, holding a phone in his hand. His gaze was so empty and frightening. Alya understood. He knows everything. Vitya, we need to talk. Yes, we need to talk. Victor was looking at his wife. How long ago? From the day we played bowling, remember? That means 2 weeks. He sighed. For 2 weeks you cheated on me, but I felt that something was wrong. I asked you, remember? What happened? What's wrong? And you looked into my eyes and smiled and lied to me as best you could. Darling, I don't understand how this could happen. He was too perfect. There are no such people. He would have known me for a very long time. My tastes, my desires, complimented me, looked after me like you haven't looked after me for a long time. Alya covered her face with her hands and sobbed again. Vitya could not look at his crying wife. He got up and hugged her, pressed her head to his shoulder. His white shirt immediately became wet with her tears. What's going to happen now? A divorce? You probably hate me now. What have I become? How are we going to live? It's a shame. It definitely won't be like before. The phone rang, an unfamiliar number. Victor replied. And then I recognized that voice. He had heard this voice 2 weeks ago. It was Arthur, the same voice, insolent, low, with emphasis. I decided it was time for the three of us to get to know each other and talk. I'll come by your place soon. Don't scold your wife too much, as I said. You wanted it yourself, and I helped her open up. Arthur hung up the phone and went to the store, bought a bottle of whiskey, fruit, something for the table. He was pleased. The matter remained small. To come, have a drink, convince the Lashka husband that everything is as it should be. Alya is bursting with attractiveness and would still cheat. But as he is a husband, he will know where, when, and with whom, and receive regular reports. Everything is a winner. Victor hung up the phone and stared at the blank screen for a few seconds, then dropped it to the floor and crushed it with his foot. Get ready, he said to his wife. We're leaving? Where to? Somewhere. To the country, away from here. I need to think. He looked at his crushed phone. Turn off the phone. In puffs, they packed their things and got into the car. The cold interior quickly fogged up from their breaths. They had to wait until the interior warmed up. The windows were sweating. Vitya behaved just as carefully despite his condition. After a slight thaw, there was ice on the roads, but they did not notice it. The car obediently braked at traffic lights and accelerated just as smoothly. Arriving at their house, Arthur was a little puzzled. There were no lights in the windows. Victor's phone was turned off, and when Ole tried to call, the machine answered with a phrase on duty. Turning on the navigator, he activated the radio beacon. No woman would go anywhere without her purse. Yes, so it is. The flash drive, which Alya carried with her, dropped the coordinates, and now they were driving along the CAD. He was not happy with this turn of events. Everything didn't go according to plan. He had already played a similar scenario once, and last time everything was as if by notes. He hadn't planned on chasing them today, but he couldn't miss them now either. Did you decide to hide from me? You're not going to make it. They drove off in the direction of Sevelosk. Arthur turned on the radio, caught the right wave. Something playful and dynamic started playing from the speakers. Or maybe it's better, the absence of witnesses is an additional pressure on them. Snow began to fall. The wipers regularly swept away large flakes from the glass. The denouement. Waking up was painful. His head was buzzing. Weakness all over his body. Eyelids. Heavy eyelids did not want to rise in any way. He realized that he was sitting. He wanted to take hold of his buzzing head to feel the sore spot, but his hands did not obey. Finally, slowly, his eyes opened, and his stiff neck hurt as he began to lift his head. It took him a moment, but he recognized the living room of his country house. There was a crackling fire in the stove, a table next to it, an idle clock hung on the wall. Weights on chains were already covered with dust. Victor remembered how he brought his wife here, how the barn went. Why? And exactly, for firewood. It was cold in the house. It was necessary to melt the stove. He searched for a long time for drier firewood that was not damp because of the leaky roof. Finally gathered them in an armful and carried them into the house. That's when he came in, crossed the threshold, suddenly lost consciousness. His wife Alya was completely naked. On the floor, she was crying. Vitya began to choke. Someone was pulling the noose up. Now, honey, I'm going to give you the most expensive gift. No, don't you dare, Vitya shouted, but only a mumble escaped from his sealed lips. In his powerless attempts to free himself, his hands were already numb. But he didn't stop. He held the tape tightly. From his attempts to escape, the chair creaked, but it held. What? Do you want this too? Arthur asked sarcastically. It's almost there. Imagine your wife pregnant with my child. You love your wife. It's not her fault. There's nothing you can do. You've been dreaming about a child for a long time, but your wife refused you all the time. She can't refuse me. Alya tried to jump off, but he quickly stopped her attempt. If you break off my bitch, Vitka is not a tenant. I swear to you. Olenka, I beg you not to. Vitya's thoughts were racing. He shook his head, mumbled. No, not like this. How could this happen? But his wife stopped trying. Vitya felt his pants getting wet. Alya was crying. Yeah, how sweet it is to knock you on your uterus. Finally, you will feel what you dreamed of. No, Vitya, don't believe him. The living room smelled of their sweat and making love. Alya remembered and accepted her role. Arthur laughed. Arthur went up to Vita. I patted his cheek. I pulled the belt around his neck, which made him start to choke again. Vitya's eyes shone with hatred, and this look made Arthur shiver and feel a little uneasy. He decided to check if he was well connected when suddenly there was a crunch of broken wood, and at the same second Victor hit his forehead in the face of his enemy, putting all his hatred into this blow. Arthur took a step back, trying to regain his balance, and immediately received a blow to the neck. Time stood still for a second. He clearly saw a part of the backrest taped to Victor's arm, sharp as a knife, blood dripping from it. He felt the warmth begin to spread from his neck down. Time returned to its run. Victor did not stop and struck several more blows to the throat. His hands and shirt were stained with blood. Arthur collapsed backwards, pressing his hands to his throat, but it was all in vain. Hearing the sound of falling, Alya got up and immediately felt a sweet smell that made her dizzy. Arthur was lying on the floor in a pool of blood. His shirt was covered with blood, which was still gurgling and coming out of the wound on his neck. Vitya, what is it? She walked over to her husband, who was frozen over the body. He seemed to have woken up. Alya, are you all right? What happened? She was looking at her husband. Parts of the broken back of the chair were taped to his arms. He looked creepy. His white shirt was covered in blood, but his face was completely calm. His eyes did not blink for a long time, and they seemed to be made of glass. I'll call the police and an ambulance. Vitya, don't. She was trembling, clinging to her husband. What's going to happen to us? Victor put his hand on his wife's head, wanted to feel the strands of her hair between his fingers, inhale her scent. Alia clung to her husband and cried on his shoulder, naked, raped and humiliated, as if she wanted everything to be as before. But her hair clumped, stuck to her bloody hand. He did not seem to notice this. Turning her face to himself and looking into her eyes wet with tears, he said, "If you love me, we will do everything right." He untied her hands, and then she helped him get rid of the remnants of the tape. When the ambulance and the police arrived, Arthur's body had long since stopped showing signs of life. Victor met them on the porch, in a coat thrown over his shirt. He was sitting on the porch steps and looked at the sky. Alia was sitting next to him, wrapped in a plaid, snuggling up to him. The snow stopped falling, the sky cleared. There were so many stars in it, as they had never seen in their lives. It's been 3 years. Victor spent almost the entire term in custody. He was lucky. He was defended by a young lawyer, good, principled, not yet spoiled by money, which they did not have. Of course, they had to tell everything. All the dirt and all that debauchery, captured by Arthur, was studied with interest by all the employees of the department. It was possible to prove that the murder was committed in a state of passion, and in the end, he was released in the courtroom. Half a year later, life began to return to its usual rut. Vidya received a new position, the first salary in a new position. The car and the house where the events took place had to be sold to cover the costs. They began to live poorer. Alia also changed jobs. Her university education came in handy. After all they had been through, they both tried their best to keep their family together and not let the bonfire of their love go out. And, although they became poorer, Vidya felt that the family had become stronger. At a subway stop, he received a text message from his wife on his phone. "Darling, you're going to be a dad." Smiley face. Smiley face. The investigator for particularly important cases closed the last volume of the case. After completing the inventory, he put several volumes of the case in a box and took them to the archive for Victor Sinitsyn. Everything could end badly. The prosecutor delayed the case as much as he could, appointed examinations, postponed meetings. They were lucky with a lawyer, a young principled man with the surname of the great Marshal of Victory, Andrei Zhukov. His name is now in all the media. The case has become resonant. After handing over their case box, he signed the log. Returning to his office, he lit a cigarette. He really wanted to wash his hands. There was so much dirt in this case.